Oh, this was fine? Oh, very well.
He's also the parliamentarian for D17, and he drove all the way up here with his brother to be with us today and present this, so please, Matthew.
Right here? All right. Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my fellow Republicans. My name is Matthew K. Jensen. I am a lifelong Idahoan and a lifelong Republican. It is really great to see all of you, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak. I wish there was a more positive reason for me to be speaking directly to you. I've been looking for a reason to come back up here ever since the 2017 summer SEC meeting. Some of you are my friends, and others, well, I would at least like to get to know you. Unfortunately, the occasion is that I need to plead and beg for something. Some of you might be aware that there's trouble brewing with the subject of state party dues, as was mentioned by the chairman, largely stemming from a very few who are misbehaving. A county that is very well able to pay its dues is refusing to, and is acting this way after going back on their word. This issue is going to rip apart the party if we don't do something about it soon at the state level. Indeed, a rather malignant cancer is spreading, and we need to administer the chemo rather quickly. This is going to do some damage, but the damage will be worse if we have an unchecked county chairman who is not only making outrageous claims of not owing money to the state party, but doing so while also making insulting and demeaning comments about Sophie's choice. The changes we seek are to make something that specifically only the State Central Committee can do, and only do so upon the proposal put forward by you, the regular, everyday Republican worker. We seek to eliminate Republican county delegations from counties who act this way, away from state conventions. Under the proposed changes, if a county doesn't pay its dues and doesn't give the state party a good reason why, and that's an important detail, then their county delegation won't be able to go to the convention at all, thereby sidestepping any issues at all about buying convention delegates or needing a convention rule change for this. As far as any of the details, I can definitely answer questions, and I'm sure there are a few other people present here who could too. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back my time.
Matthew, I wanted you could explain briefly, because I don't know if everybody understands the difference between having convention rules and the state party rules, and when you can change which.
Okay. So when you look up the state rules for the Idaho Republican Party, you get this really long PDF. It's like 78 pages by now, I think, or something like that. And that's because it's not one document, it's 3 documents. There are the state rules that govern internal party matters, a lot like things that we're doing right now. There's delegate selection rules, which are a bit of a mess, but they work roughly. And then there's the actual rules about the actual convention. Those are the differences.
Okay. And the convention rules, as I understand it, can only be changed at a convention.
That is correct.
So our problem with trying to draft these rules is we have to be able to put in place the dues with the penalty of not sending delegates to the convention without changing the convention rules.
That's right, and there's a couple of us that found a way to do it, and that is to...
You're being modest.
Well, this isn't about me. I'll just say that.
Matthew came up with the way of doing this, which I looked at and others looked at and said, yeah, that'll work. And so that's what we're seeing before you here now. And anyhow, are there any questions? Yes.
I didn't see about this.
What would be the parameters? Who determines what is a viable excuse?
The State Executive Committee, and I would imagine the only excuse would really be is if they cannot pay, and that was how the whole waiver part of the language came in. Was I'm drawing a blank as to who asked about this. They might be present in the room for all I know, but there are counties that are in the state of Idaho that can't pay. That's because they either weren't able to raise enough money or what have you. There are myriad excuses for that, and that's why it's kind of left open like that. But it's going to be a little bit of a stark difference if you're applying for a waiver, but you very well could have paid your state dues, like with Ada County.
It was Section 6 on the back of the page has that counties which are unable to pay the membership dues may appeal the requirement for payment by petitioning and writing the state executive committee for a waiver at the next convention. The petition must clearly state the financial hardship, reason explained for not paying. Now, as you just heard in our treasurer's report, all of our financial matters are a matter of public record and as they're reported to the Secretary of State. So the executive committee has that transparency to look at their records, know how much money they have, and presumably the county also has a budget. So we can look at those two documents and say, oh yeah, you don't have the money to pay this, and so we're going to give you a waiver. But if you're Kootenai County, for example, and you've got $100,000 in the bank and you're looking at a $10,000 or $14,000 bill that you haven't paid, then we don't have an excuse for not paying. Same goes for Ada County and some of the other larger counties. Well, I think Ada is the only large county that's been recalcitrant.
I believe so. I think something's going on with Region 7, but I have this nasty habit of getting really excited about something and not actually answering a question. So I did answer your question, right? Okay.
Yes, Derek.
So isn't it true that Ada County has not ever paid?
That's not technically true, but they don't pay them on time and they don't pay them in full. But it's not technically true, but it's a splitting hairs kind of thing, especially when 2 chairmans ago, her name was Becky Young, and she blamed a lot of other people for those shortcomings. I'll just say that. I didn't come up here to rag on people I hate, so. I swear I didn't.
He did it while doing it. That was awesome.
Sorry. Yeah. Oh, Region.
When our friend Brian Davidson, a strong conservative, was chair in Ada County, the problem, as I understand it, was that there was a Lincoln Day Association that claimed the Lincoln Day fundraising mechanism, and then didn't give any money to the conservative state or conservative county organization, and that's why at that point Ada County Central Committee couldn't pay because the Lincoln Day was kind of there was an imposter Lincoln Day, and if I furthermore when a more moderate organization wanted to take over that Ada County organization, that was their claim, was that Ada County should be paying its quota. And the very same people are still in charge, not paying, because Dorothy Moon is the state chair. Is that or is that not true?
That's pretty much the situation. However, I think there's an important detail left out because you mentioned the tenure of Ryan Davidson, a good friend of mine. And on top of what you mentioned, we also had an interesting situation where a lot of previous, at the state level, a lot of previous agreements about state party dues were done away with. On top of, we had people not only paying, donating to the state party directly, encouraging others to do state party directly, and campaign against having any kind of credit in that direction. And some of these very same people are the very same others that you mentioned. The very same people. I could name, but then again, I'll refer to a previous answer I gave, and then everybody laughed.
So what you're saying is, Ada, what it comes down to is you're kind of holding their feet to the fire, that if they don't pay their state dues, they won't be able to come to the convention.
It's more than a fire, because you can go back to the communications I had with Brent and some people, and it's not a fire, it's a frickin' nuke. Call me Dr. Oppenheimer, because I gathered a bunch of scientists, and we.
So it's a sliding scale of what they pay, though, right? I mean, it's not one amount.
The formula's in the rules.
It's determined by the treasurer of the party, and there's a formula for it, and it's capped at $250,000 total for all the counties over a 2-year period in the rules right now. And it's really just for the operation costs. But yeah, it's, you don't pay, you don't go.
But Ada gotta be, because of the population, the biggest percent.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And I would, Ada really has no excuse. They're 3.5 times larger than Kootenai County. We're the second largest Republican county. We're slightly lower in population, but we're higher in the number of Republicans. So we just edged out Canyon County. And if you look at our Secretary of State report since 2000, we've raised just shy of $1 million. And the state party has raised just shy of $1 million. So we have done as much fundraising as the entire Idaho party. And so there's no reason why. No reason why Ada County can't afford to do it. Yes, Mr. Michael.
Mr. Chairman, I wanted to research this before trying to ask this question, so I didn't have to bore everybody with this. But when we get elected in the primary year, right on the ballot, you'll see your name. It says something about elected as a delegate to the convention, meaning county convention. So there's different levels of conventions that we're reorganizing. When you think about the statutes involved in some of that language, I wanted to look at these statutes that have anything to do with this where we don't necessarily count.
No.
It's, I want to say, Idaho Code 34505 or 506, one of those in Chapter 5, where it delegates that specific responsibility to either a state convention or the state central committee of the party, which this would definitely be that. That's why there's a separate document for delegate selection and rules of the convention.
So if I could ask in a different way, have you fleshed out any of these counter arguments that they might pull the rug out from under, saying, well, the statute says?
Well, the statute is the final one, but I have asked around a bunch of people. In fact, I tried to war game this in a little bit.
One of the interesting facts of this is that there are delegates that are assigned by virtue of the county, like the legislative district chair goes automatically, and we have 3 delegates that go, the chairman, the state commitment, state woman, those are automatically. But then there are the bonus delegates that go. And so this would primarily affect those bonus delegates, so they wouldn't be without representation. They just wouldn't have their full complement.
Well, it's not completely it. The advisory mentioned in there, I forget exactly which part, the subsection B, and neither the Republic, that's meant to completely eliminate a county delegation. Now, the way it works in a county like Ada is that there are legislative districts inside of the county, and these are the ones that have just the 3 that come from a delegation. That's it. Those are not affected by this because legislative districts don't pay dues.
Right. Yes.
Mr. Chair, is there a mechanism in here where, say, a county like Benoit, sometimes they might be able to raise half of it, but not all of it, and there's other counties throughout the state that struggle raising money? Is there a mechanism where if they can only come up with half, that they can send half their delegation, just out of good faith?
I would think that if they came up with any funds and then plead financial hardship, then they would be given a waiver and they'd have their full delegation.
This kind of situation is what the waiver was for, was somebody who can't do the full thing, at least tell the state executive committee about that, and they can rule on it from there. And in theory, you would, with that situation, I would imagine that they would send their full delegation, actually, if the state executive committee were so inclined.
Fine. Any other questions? Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate it. Okay, everybody clear what we're voting on? All those in favor of submitting this rule change, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried unanimously.
Are you going to go to the other counties and do this presentation?